everybody, so I'm going to walk through the full steps for creating our inlay art using Fusion 360. So I started with, actually I have a nice little drawing right here I'm going to include. Beautiful little house picture that I'm going to include. Hopefully yours will be a little more detailed, but I just want to have something to kind of start with and go off of. Some of the stuff, some of you might have already done before, maybe you've already done it in class, but just I figured I'd do the full thing, and I'll put some timestamps below to show you kind of like, to highlight different sections of this. Let's see. Okay, I think, yeah, okay, I think I'm trying to think how I should get this started. One thing I need to keep track of is the different colors I'm going to do, but I'll get to that in just a second here. So I'm going to import my canvas. I went to Insert, Canvas, importing that in. I need to select which plane I wanted to put it on. I'm just going to put it on the bottom. Doesn't really matter, I think, for this because we're only using one plane. We'll import there, and I think I can look from the top to get a nice overview here. Now, as I import it, it's just going to be kind of whatever dimensions the picture is, which might not be so helpful. One thing I'm going to do, hopefully you can see this off. You go up to Documents and Settings. I'm going to change this settings to be in inches. So if I click this and go over, it should pop up a thing. I want to do this in inches just because it's maybe what we're most comfortable with. We're going to do it in canvas. I want to make this, the biggest size of this should be like 8 by 10, should be like the approximate proportions on this. What we're going to do is we don't know, this just kind of import it like whatever size it wanted to be, but we can go in here and we can actually set this so it is a specific length. We're going to go into the canvas, we'll right click on it, say calibrate, and then we're going to select 2 points on here. Should be little crosshairs like this. We're going to select 2 points on that, 1, 2, and then we are going to just set this to be like whatever. See, right now it's like 0.69 inches. Like that's not going to be good for our laser cutting. So we're going to set that to be 10, and it'll adjust everything else to be proportional. It'll keep the ratio the same, so you don't get any kind of stretching or anything, but it'll just adjust all the other sides to be that same size. All right. Now, okay, we have our canvas. This is like, we commonly use this in Fusion. If you're going to use it, we can use it for like technical drawings to say if we have a drawing of an object that we want to recreate, we can import it as a canvas, make the proportions correct, and then we can draw on top of it. So in here, we're just going to draw on top of this. We're going to create a sketch on top of this canvas. We're going to hit Create Sketch. We're going to choose the same plane as our canvas is, and then we're going to start sketching in and covering up all of these pieces. Let's see. So things that I want to do in here. Probably not going to do the whole thing. I might do the whole thing, but I won't bore you with all that. I just want to get the major parts in here. Let's see, key things in here. I'm going to put in a little rectangle. It really wants to like snap to a point, which is kind of annoying. I really want to get to just this edge. It's trying to like snap to a point on the grid, which is not so great. Doesn't have to be, I don't have to like perfectly match this. That's not my goal. But I'd like to get as close to these corners as I can, just to make everything kind of match up. But I'm just going to zoom, 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 zoom. That's good enough for me. All right, we'll go back out. All right, so we have the first thing in here. Okay, one thing in our picture that's not good is that every shape on here should be fully contained. So it should have it should form a full shape, which means I should be able to like kind of trace the border of every object on here. So like for example, in this tree, if I look at this tree, like all the, I don't know, the bushy part of the tree, that is one contained object because I could kind of trace the full outline of this. Same thing for the house, like the roof of the house, the border of the house, the windows, all that stuff looks great, and I can recreate that in my drawing exactly. But some things that are not good in here that I will have to kind of work with are this kind of like the driveway or the kind of walkway up to the house. It goes out, but then it kind of like, it just doesn't finish. So I either need to have a line that's going to connect this to finish the shape to make a full outline, or I need to connect this to maybe the edge. That could also form my outline. Similarly, I see some things like this mountain doesn't quite, or whatever hill in the background doesn't quite go to the full edge of this, so I need to work on that too. Let's see some cool things I can do in here. I think, okay, so I just need to manage that. Same thing, I think this bush in here, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the fence. These should all be like individual pieces, so I don't have to feel like I'm going to be exactly the same as what the picture is, but it can be a good starting point for me. I'll just do some basic shapes. Let's get started with some basic shapes. I can go over to rectangle. I can also access this using just the R button to get R for rectangle. For rectangle, I'm going to hit R. I can click 2 points, and that will form a side. Yeah, actually, maybe I want to do this in a different way. I think I want to do the big parts of the house first. I'm going to do this big front wall. And you can skip forward here if you're already like past this step, but there are going to be some key things I'm going to try and do in here. So I'm going to make this wall, and I'm going to make this next wall. I need to make sure that these two things connect. Ooh, it's kind of not quite a rectangle, but I think I can get pretty close. Let's do this. I'm going to do a rectangle like this. I can do my first kind of fancy move here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click down at the bottom. Actually, I'm going to click a little bit off. I'll show a tool that we can do here. So I got my rectangle. It's not quite lining up with each other. So if I want to make sure this line and this line are kind of like the same line, I can go into here and I can start doing some constraints. So constraints are things where we can say like, make these two things happen. For example, a very common one we'll use is coincident, which is going to make 2 points or a point and a line kind of match up together. So for example, here, I want to make sure that these two, I could make these 2 points be exactly the same, like be the same point, because that's going to bring the edge of my rectangle over. So if I go over here in coincident and I select this circle, this point, and this point, ooh, kind of moved over a little bit. Not exactly the way I wanted. It shifted this whole rectangle. It's like, yes, I can do that. Let's shift this whole thing over a little bit more. I'm going to shift that out. Yeah. Ideally, I might get this thing to be kind of fixed to a kind of maybe the origin to begin with and get so everything's kind of based on the origin, but I'm not going to worry about this too much. All right, I do have one little thing. I don't like the way this is not exactly a rectangle. We have this little line over here. So this is the first little technique I'm going to do. I'm going to add in a line. I can just say L for a line, and I can click this corner down to here. I'm not going to try and be like exactly matching with this. I don't know. I could kind of move this thing up maybe a little bit. This is like very thick lines, and mine's not a thick line. It's a very precise line. So I could try and put this in the center, and that might be good. And then I really don't need this line. I don't need this section of my full line anymore. So this is a really important tool that we can use. We can use the trim tool. If we hit T on our keyboard or we cut this, get these little scissors, we can cut off a little bit of that. Great. And now we can see right now we have these two shapes they're fully contained. I can tell that because when I click on them, it is a full shape and it's gonna like kind of be just the part of the shape that I want. Let's see, I want to show one more tool before I just put this on pause and skip further ahead. I want to show, I think there's a couple cool things I can do with a circle. I want to show how to do this like bushy circle, and I'll also do the same thing for the clouds. I can do circle. What I can do is I can create some circles. If I create 2 circles, I can also hit the trim button to cut out parts of the circle to get that kind of bumpy, cloudy, tree-like shape. I can do, that's one trick that I can do. Draw 2 circles and then hit trim. So that's gonna be really helpful for drawing in everything on my tree there. Another thing that I can do when I make my circle, if I go into circle and I go into 3-point circle, that's going to define a circle based on 3 points. So if I click 3 positions on this, it'll make a circle that exactly matches the one in there. I can repeat this process a few more times. Click, 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 click. And I can start to see the outline of this. So let me just finish this up, and I'm going to go through my trim, and that'll be the end of this part of my diagramming. I might not even do the full. I might not even do the full diagram. Just get as much as we need to have in here. Let me pause this even while I do this. Actually, one thing I'm going to do in here, because it's really annoying me, is like I can go into my sketch palette on the right side, and I can take off snap. So that means it should no longer snap to the grid. I think I even want to take off my sketch grid because I don't really care about the grid for this one. Similarly, if I don't care about the constraints on here, like there's some constraints that are showing up, I typically really want that I want to see kind of what constraints are in here in a real engineering design. But in this case, I don't really care that much. So I can click off those constraints till maybe later, and that will hide some of these annoying features in there, which again are super useful and are very, very useful for making an actual design, but not so much for this. All right, I'm gonna pause this. All right, so I have my full circle. I have all the circles done for this tree. I'm gonna go into my trim tool. And also I can just hit T on this, remember. Some shortcuts can make your life a little bit easier, and I can cut out all the rest of these parts. I have my beautiful tree left over. I'm gonna do one last thing on here, and I think I'll pause it while I get everything else finished up on here. And again, I'm not looking to get a full, probably won't do the full thing on here just for saving myself some time. But trim all that off. Okay, now I have my tree. Let me trim that little bit here, that little bit. If there's any other little bits that are remaining in here, this can be kind of annoying. So we don't get all this stuff, it's going to show up in our laser cut. We really don't want that. Anything left in here? A little tiny. There should just be the centers of the circle left in here, so I'm looking for any other little things that are not the center of what I know would be a circle. All right, so we have that in there. Great, I have the first tree. I should maybe check in and see how my progress is going. In order to do that, I can turn off the canvas. If I click this button, the canvas will disappear, and I'll just see what's left of my work. So I can see like I must have destroyed something in here because I'm missing part of that tree. So I should really finish that up. All right, added in a quick sketch, and I got that last part in. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get as much of this design in. I might not do everything, but I'll get as much of the design in as I can. Let's see. I'm going to check over here. Is everything good? I'm worried a little bit about like this little dot here. I guess that's okay. That's just kind of part of this line. Yeah, so we should be doing good so far. All right, hopefully come back and we'll have all this done. All right, so at this point I got most of this done. If we get rid of the sketch, I have that and I have that. Oh, I didn't really get rid of the, let me trim out some of the stuff in here. I thought I just did that. I'm still not saved. Trim out all this stuff in here. I do want to do one last thing before, just to highlight like the last bit of the sketching. Also, like as I'm doing this trimming, I don't know, it's helpful just kind of, I think it's helpful to see like just, you really have to pay attention to the details because some of these things can be really small. Little elements like that can be easy to skip over, so really gotta be careful about getting everything in here. And then, okay, we should be good there. All right, so now if I get rid of my canvas, I should have this full thing on here. All right, now one thing I did want to highlight on here, as I mentioned, was I have this kind of sweep of a hill in the background, and I want to capture that. It's also not a really good, it's not a great use for doing a circle because it's not quite like that. I can try and use a fit point spline. So, and also I want to make sure this goes all the way to the end here. So I'm going to select a spline is kind of like a, more or less like a curved line that we can make. I'm going to select these 2 points and then I can kind of curve this. Well, let's see. I wonder if I shouldn't do my spline maybe a little bit lower. I think there's a little bit of artistry in there. Well, you know, I could probably also just move some of these points later. Make it something like that. Oh, fit point spline, there, there. Maybe something like that should be good. And I think I can grab some of these points and drag them around a little bit to make this a little more approximate to what I want. So I think something like that looks pretty good. And then I could probably take this point, pull it up here. Now I do want to, okay, so now that should be like close to good. All right, so that's pretty good. And then we can go in here and trim any of the excess pieces. So I don't need this little piece on here. And I don't need this, I think this is part of the spline. So let's see how that worked out, see if that worked for us. I do have this whole thing in here. I do want to get rid of this part of the spline as well. Hopefully it'll be friendly about me doing that. That looks pretty good. It's going to get that whole spline in here. If I get rid of the image, it might be clearer. Yeah, good. We have these full things. I want to make sure of this. Okay, it's looking like it might be 2 points over there, but it's just a single one. All right, so we're pretty good in here. We have this all done. Okay, I'm gonna, well, I guess I'll keep on with this video.